was attacked as an 8-year-old because I talked like a white girl. My family had just moved to a new town, and one day after school, a kid grabbed me, spun me around, and scratched my face. She nearly took my left eye. This is my earliest memory of feeling like an outsider. So code switching and role playing became my early survival tools. I copied how the popular kids talked and how they acted because my young brain decided that I needed to fit in to survive. I want you to think about a time when you felt out of place. Not because of anything you did, but simply because of who you are. Maybe it was a physical attack. Maybe it was a comment or an assumption that reminded you, you are not one of us. So this isn't just about 8-year-old Naeemah. I'm thinking about the rules that outsiders accept in childhood about how much space we're allowed to take up. Being different is dangerous, right? Boy, girl, black, white, queer, straight, nerd, jock. Peer pressure is real, and kids who are different get bullied. So what do I mean by outsider? It's not just about race or class or gender. You might feel like an outsider if you are secretly living with imposter syndrome. See, I was always waiting for people to realize that I had no idea what I was talking about. If you're an introvert in a loud office, avoiding social gatherings because they drain you. Living and working outside of your native language. Or just a new hire, trying to prove yourself. Feeling like an outsider isn't just about who you are. It's about being in spaces that weren't designed with you in mind. So you might identify as an outsider if you grew up a girl. You learned early that it could be dangerous to make boys uncomfortable. So you accepted certain rules for safety. Be quiet. Be agreeable. Follow his lead. And now in your professional life, those rules show up in different ways. Don't ask. If you earn the promotion, they'll give it to you. Don't ask. They know how hard you worked for the raise. Don't raise your hand for the stretch assignment. Not yet. Do not push back. The rules that kept you safe in childhood became the barriers that hold you back as an adult. And let's think about the messages that you received. By a show of hands, how many of you were expected to be courageous and take big risks? Yeah, not many of you. Okay. And how many of you were expected to behave while you watch the other kids break some things? Yeah. We might identify as outsiders. If you were raised by a single parent or in poverty or with a lot of siblings, then you know children are to be seen and not heard. Stop asking so many questions. It's not always about you. We outsiders spend a lot of our lives being told to stop bringing attention to our existence. Now, pause. If you are having a hard time finding yourself in my audience, if you don't feel like I'm talking to you, this is what it feels like to be an outsider. Sit in that sensation. Think about what it might be like to feel this way all the time. So I didn't just learn to be quiet. I played roles. And I worked my way to a series of successes. First chair and drum major in the marching band, co-captain of the speech team, third in my class, and accepted on scholarship to Harvard. Now, after a childhood of thriving as an outsider, feeling out of place at Harvard came as no surprise. I remember sitting in the dining hall one day and heard these kids at the next table literally joking in Shakespeare. And I'm like, who understands Shakespeare well enough to joke in his language? I had only read Romeo and Juliet. And then we watched West Side Story so we would get the plot. If Romeo had sung like West Side's Crew, then maybe I'd have understood him too. But the original text, that was a different level. So I had two choices: feel like a failure or rewrite the narrative. See, there's a difference between intelligence and knowledge. And at 17, I had to decide that while I didn't have the same foundation they had, I was just as smart. Even when we find success, we can still feel like outsiders. So I rewrote my narrative from "I'm not ready for this" to "I can figure this out." See, the challenge is not proving that you have a right to be here. It's deciding that you have the right to be anywhere you want to be. So I used to picture these big, fancy rooms with very important people inside of them. And I wanted to be in, but I felt like it would always be just a little out of reach. I would say things like, well, I don't want to be the president. I want to be the person behind the president, right? I had this language that intentionally put me in the shadows. But when I think about what I really want, and when my coaching clients tell me what they really want, it's to be at the center of things, where decisions are made, where people are listening, where you get to be creative and have impact and influence, and where you make more money. You don't have to change your voice or your identity to get into that room. But you can learn the rules for access. And then you get to decide which ones to keep and which ones to break. So at this point, you might be surprised to discover that I identify as an introvert. Spending my childhood and my life trying to find my voice and fighting against the urge to hide in a corner with a book, it wasn't the most obvious or natural path. But as a kid, I hated restrictions. And I had to create options to rise above the low expectations of Harvey, Illinois. My friend Jess says that my superpower is taking nerdy people and giving them permission to build out other facets of who they are. So I believe that there is greatness in each and every one of you. But you have to figure out which very uncomfortable rules are going to unlock yours. Because when we push past the rules that no longer serve us, we step into rooms where we don't quite fit, we ask the questions that nobody else is asking, and we bring perspectives that challenge the status quo. From humble beginnings like Viola Davis, Michelle Yeoh, Lil Nas X, Michelle Obama, we don't just adapt to the way things are, we shape the way people think, the way they operate, the way the world functions, simply by asking insiders to bring our voice into the room. So let me ask you, how are you going to amplify your voice? When I was a young actress in Boston, I had this incredible director, and he cast me in the coolest roles. And I had a critic. And this critic made it his job to remind everyone that I was an outsider. His favorite language for my reviews, again, in a role not written for a Black woman. But I didn't play the roles as any race. I just played them as people. So I kept auditioning, and I kept getting cast, and I even won some awards. So I kept playing the roles not written for a Black woman. See, we're often told what we cannot do, and magic happens when we decide that there are no limits. Okay? So I stepped into my next career in corporate finance. I brought my childhood rules, my college confidence, and my lessons from the stage. I watched successful leaders take chances, move around, and keep getting better. I found mentors to teach me the things that I didn't know. They challenged me, and they pushed me. I learned my favorite corporate concept: act now as forgiveness later. And I became known as a person who could figure it out, whatever it was. And then more and more often, I noticed how much I was the only Black woman in the room. So my friends started asking me, what are you doing that we're not? So here's what I've got. A key difference between insiders and outsiders is permission. Insiders don't wait for permission. They haven't been taught to silence themselves. The difference is not about talent. It's about behavior. So if you are ready to shift into your audacity, let's change your rules. Apply before you feel 100% qualified. Insiders assume that they will figure it out. Okay? Stop just being grateful for the opportunity. Insiders know their value and they make sure others do too. Okay? Use every no as a step towards the next yes. The difference between insiders and outsiders is not talent, it's relentless persistence. And most importantly, build your support network. Bootstrapping is a myth, y'all. Insiders do not do this alone. Find a coach to push you and help you to find your better self. Allies to cheer you on and help you find new adventures. Mentors to share their experience and help you understand what's possible. And sponsors to speak your name in that room and help you get inside. And if none of this makes a difference for you, then it's time to find a new playground or build your own. To my insiders, I haven't forgotten about you. Now that you have a sense for the outsider experience, I challenge you. Invite us into your business, into your social circles. I promise you, we have some very interesting things to say. And to my outsiders, whether it's race, class, or gender, social status, education, experience, age, language, disability, body type, religion, immigration status, neurodivergence, or just the quiet sense that you don't quite fit. Before we created rules for safety, before we learned to shrink ourselves, we were all just little kids, bold and curious, full of possibility. I think back to 8-year-old me before that day at school. Before I learned that it was dangerous to stand out, before I believed that I had to perform to survive. I was just a kid who spoke the way she spoke, asked a lot of questions, and took up space without apologizing. Try to remember, who were you before the world told you to be smaller? You don't have to play by the rules that kept you safe. It's time to design new ones. Rules that let you be seen and heard. Rules that allow you to take up any space you choose to fill. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't need an invitation. The stage is yours. Rewrite the script that was never meant for you. Play every role. And be magnificent.
Thank you.